Hello, my name is Jack Dulles, Director of Training at Tulsa Welding School, and today we're going to go over how to set up your machine for stick welding and go over kind of the basics of how to strike an arc and kind of the do's and don'ts, how to make a good bead, and then what it looks like if you're doing these things wrong. So I'll talk about long arc, and I'll talk about travel speed, too fast, too slow. I'll go through each one of those things, but that's basically what we're going to talk about today. So let's go over the machine first. You got to know how to set up the machine. So you're going to have a stinger. They call it whip, leads. There's lots of different names for it, but we call it a stinger, okay? And your stinger, when you're welding with 7018, you want to put your stinger into the positive. So you can see here, it's got a little positive there. We're going to take our end, put it in. It does go in there, I promise you. Go in, turn it over, nice and tight. Then your ground, okay, this is our ground. You have a ground and it needs to go to your workpiece. And we already have it grounded to the back of our table here. But anytime you'll have to actually ground your piece or ground wherever you're welding on. So in your ground will go in your negative. So let's recap. Positive for your stinger, ground for your negative for when you're stick welding with 7018. All right. Our amperage is going to be on 110 to 120 whenever you're welding it in the flat position. I'll just keep it at 110 for now. Let's talk about your metal. Okay, your metal, you got to have it clean and prepped. You want it all you want to grind it all clean, get rid of all rust, mill scale, grease, whatever may be on it. You want to eliminate all that, so you grind until it's nice and shiny. Once you got a nice shiny metal, then you're ready to start welding on it. So there's lots of ways of putting your rod in your stinger. I don't know if you can see it in there, but if you ever hold a stinger in your hand, you'll see there's several ways of biting it. You can bite it at a downward 45. You can bite it at an upward 45. You can bite it straight out. You can bite it out of the top. You can bite it down here out of the bottom. There's so many various ways that you can clamp your rod in there. It's entirely up to you. That is your preference. It's however you like to do it. And when I'm welding in the flat, most of the time I have it out of the 90. Okay? And that way I can just go straight down over the top of it. Now I'm not saying you have to do it this way. There's lots of ways of putting it in your stinger like I just talked about, but this is how I like to do it, and this is how I'm going to show you today. So we've covered the machine, how to set it up. We've covered your base metal. We got it all clean. We talked about how you can put your rod in your stinger and how you can hold it. So let's talk about actually how to strike this rod up. How do you strike up a 7018 rod? Well, if you can see on the end of this welding rod, there's a bare piece of metal there, just slightly there with the flux around it, okay? What's got to happen is you got to complete the circuit. So once you put your rod into your stinger, it bites on. Now when this actual piece of metal touches your other piece of metal, it completes the circuit, and that's what causes you to get that arc and that gets the rod burning. So how do you strike it up? Well, there's a couple ways. You can tap it on the base metal, okay? A lot of times it will stick, so you got to watch that, and that's not why they call it stick welding, but it does stick. And then also there's a scratching like a match, okay? You scratch it like a match, just like if you were going to strike a match, same concept. You get it down there and you strike a match. So it's really how you want to do it, but it takes time and practice. It doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to come in and just strike it up first time every time. I promise you that won't happen. And if it does, please, I'd like to meet you, because I don't know anybody that just strikes it every time. Anyways, so then you come over and we'll strike it up, and then we're going to run a nice bead. And so I'm going to go over with you how to run a nice bead. Then I'm going to show you how not to run a bead. We'll talk about long arcing and things. So first, let's just focus on the bead. So what we'll do is we'll strike up, and I'm just going to keep a nice tight arc length. I am not letting the rod rest on the metal. You want to keep it close to the metal, but we're not just sitting here and letting it burn itself away. We're actually keeping it right off the top of the metal, and we're controlling our travel speed. We're controlling our arc length away. And what your arc length is, that's the distance away from the end of the rod to the base metal. That's called your arc length, and you want to keep a nice tight arc length. Your travel speed, what is your travel? That is the rate of which you're moving your hands across. It controls your puddle. If you go really fast, you'll have V-shaped beads, and they won't look good. And if you go slow, they'll be really wide, crowned up, big old beads. And I'll show you kind of those as we go along. So let's try to avoid those. but it all takes time and practice, okay? This is not something that happens overnight. You've got to put in the time, you've got to put in the practice to get it right. So let's run a good bead, and then I'll go through some of the don'ts, and you'll be able to see them as I'm welding, and we'll talk about them. And those are the things you want to avoid. If you see yourself doing them, you need to correct them. So let's just run a good bead first. So we got everything set up, and like I say, we've got it ran at about 110, and I'm just going to strike it up like a match. And I'm just going to run it on down the plate here, nice and smooth. Take your time. Always be comfortable. ABCs of welding. Always be comfortable. Make sure you set up to where you feel comfortable on it. You know, over here, and you don't want to just be like leaning, camping out over here. You want to get set up to where you're just braced off, your elbows braced off, and you can got a nice, smooth travel speed. And I always kind of just walk through it. If I'm welding, okay, that worked good. So I struck up here, and I'm welding. Oh, yeah, that feels good. I like it. So I think we can run a nice, smooth bead. So that's where you can just practice and get everything set. Okay, so we've walked through all that. Let's run a bead. What you're looking for when you're welding that is that puddle behind the rod. You're not actually watching the rod burn away, you're watching the puddle behind it. And what you want to watch for is that nice C-shaped puddle following you along, keeping it the same width, keeping it the same little height all the way down. As I'm welding along, I'm slowly pushing that rod down because it's eating it away, and I'm slowly pushing it down and keeping my travel speed nice and smooth. Okay, and that's how you run a nice smooth bead. Whenever you run it nice and smooth, the slag just pops right off. And if you're over here having to beat it with a chipping hammer, you're over here hitting it with a chipping hammer, you're probably doing it wrong, okay? So if it's nice and smooth, you can see how the slag just pops right off. Nice and simple, easy, nothing to it, okay? So let me show you some of the don'ts. Let's go through some of those where you can see them. First thing we're going to start off with is we're going to start off with long arcing, okay? And you're going to see what's going to happen to my bead. It's going to be very wide, flat. There's going to be a lot of splatter and smoke all over the place. It's going to be even kind of hard to see the bead, so you're going to have to look closely. But you'll see, and what I'm doing is long arcing. I'm actually got the rod really far away from the base metal. Okay, what you want to do is you want to keep a nice tight arc length, but I'm going to let it get far away so where you can see me long arcing. These are something that you don't want to do, okay? These are don'ts. So if you see yourself long arcing, you see this process happening, push your rod back down to the base metal. All right? I'm going to run this whole bead long arcing just so you can see this whole bead long arcing, just so you can see what it looks like. Here we go. Yeah, you got to get it struck up sometimes. All right, this is what long arcing looks like. You can see how the metal is like trying to drop into the plate. You can see it's like droplets falling on the plate. This is not good. See how the droplets are like dripping out of the rod and like falling into the puddle, causing lots of splatter, causing really irregular the puddle, making it go all different directions. This is not what you want to do. And that is a terrible weld, okay? You start doing those types of things, that's not what you want to do. Like I said, I exaggerated on it. I long arced it to the best of my ability to where even the rod went out because I got it so far away. And you can see, look at my slag, look at my plate, look at all the smoke and stuff everywhere. That's not good. And watch, the slag does not come off, okay? You have to actually start chipping at it. And that's bad. You ever had that slag slap up and hit you on your lip? Trust me, it's not something you want to happen. It burns the crap out of your lip. So try to avoid this. Okay, if you see this happening, push the rod closer to the metal. All right, you can see it's not good. It's all bad. All right. Now I'm going to show you what it actually looks like with you burying the rod into the metal. You've got it crammed down in there. You're not keeping the arc distance, the proper distance away. You're just shoving it down in there, and this is all bad too. So let's go through that. And this is all I'm going to run this whole bead of it just burying in there, and you'll see that it's very hard to see because there's no light coming out because you've got the rod just shoved down into the metal, and you'll see it build up behind it, just building up real bad, and really not even been able to control it. So I'll show you. Here's what it looks like. You can't even hardly see the bead because I've got it buried down into the metal. I can't even see where I'm going because I've got it shoved into the metal so hard. And I can't control my rod because it moves on the plate because I've got it shoved down in the metal so hard. Okay, now I will say that's probably better than long arcing because it does put down a little bit better bead than long arcing, but you can still see it's all crowned up. I can look at it just by seeing it. It's all big and bulky, and like I said, I couldn't even see where I was going because I had it pushed down into the metal. There was no light coming out around it, so I couldn't see in front of me because I had it just shoved in the metal. And then as I got it going, shoved in the metal, sometimes it's kicking and moving around because I got so much pressure setting it, trying to push it down. So try to avoid these things. These are all things you don't want to come across. And you can still see the slag still wants to stick. It doesn't want to come up the way it should. But as you can see, there's a bead. You can see how crowned up it is, how big and bulky. And that's not something you want, okay? You want a nice smooth bead. All right, on this one, I'm going to show you travel speed too slow, and then I'm going to show you travel speed too fast. So first we'll start with too slow, and then I'll go into showing you too fast. Here's a slow travel speed. Okay. And it would help if I actually used a rod that was good. You can see, if you look, it's all burned off the side. See how the flux is all gone? That was my fault. I should have used a different rod. See how the flux is all gone? That's no good. Can I show it to you? Yeah. You see how the flux is all gone off the rod? See that? That's not good. Okay, if a rod's got all the flux missing off the side of it like that, just get a new rod, okay? I'll show you actually how to use that rod, but that's a different video. All right, so back to too slow, then too fast. Here we go. Too slow of a travel speed. I'm keeping my good distance. I got a good arc control, but I'm just going entirely too slow. All right, that's what too slow looks like. Now let me show you what too fast looks like. Okay, as you can see, look at the slow. Look how it's just the heat input. Look how big and wide the bead is. This isn't good. Okay, and then also if you look at the next right to the right of it here, you'll actually see where I went too fast. And you can see how small and narrow the beads are. They come real V-shaped, not like a C shape. And that lets you know you're going entirely too fast. So if you see your beads all V-shaped down, not like a C, but like a V, and that means you're going too fast. You're pulling it too quick. Let it get more of a C shape. And like I say, if you see it really big, really wide, built up, you're going too slow. You need to increase your travel speed just a little bit faster. You can come out with good quality beads. So we just went over all about how to set up a machine. Talked to you about 7018, so let's recap just one more time. So we talked about the machine, how to set it up, about having your stinger in the positive, ground in the negative. Talked about how you set up your base metal. You got to make sure it's all clean before you start learning how to weld. Then we went over how to strike up a 7018 rod. I showed you how to run a good bead. Then I showed you the do's and don'ts. You know, I went over all long arcing. I went over too slow a travel speed. Went over too fast of a travel speed. Showed you what burying the rod looks like. So it's really all about putting in the hood time, okay? And that's what we do here at Tulsa Welding School. Right here in this booth, as you see, we get our students come in here and they put in hood time. This is what we call it, hood time. Putting your hood on and spending time underneath this hood. This is how you get good at welding. It doesn't happen any other way. It only happens by putting your hood on and coming in and practicing in a booth. And that's what we do at Tulsa Welding School. We have about 1,000 students graduate every year out of this program. And it's all because they come in here and they put in the time, they put in the hood time, and that's why they go out and be successful. And we have a tremendous amount of graduates that go on and change their lives and go on and do great things. And you too can be a part of this as well if you want to join up in Tulsa Welding School, or if you want to practice at your house and watching my videos. Like I say, take your time, watch them, practice, spend some time underneath this hood, and you too can be a good welder. Thank you for watching and have a great day. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something today. And if you want to stay up to date and get tips and tricks to become a better welder, then subscribe to our channel. And if you would like to learn even more right now, click on our video. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.